welcome to Secured. Who do we got here? We got Jordan, we got Emmanuel, we got Bolu, we got Ellis, and we got Carmelo. Man, this is going to be very, very good. So, as you guys know, we're going to be talking about manhood and what it really means to be a man, right? So, we're just going to jump right into it, get started. So when you guys think of manhood, give me 3 words, right, that describes manhood to you. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think I'm going to start out just power. I think power, leadership, and I think provider. 3 words.
Yeah, I agree with that. Think of 3 Ps, actually. So a protector, a provider, and patient.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I think a worshiper, self-confident, self-aware, and provider. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I would say he's focused, he's driven, and he's a leader.
Yeah, for me, I'll say bold, courageous, faithful.
Nice. Honestly, I'll just say one word because you guys basically said what I was going to say, but I would say responsible. I would just add that word in there, but yeah, those are all good. So, show of hands. How many of you grew up in a 2-parent household? Wow. So, another show of hands. How many of you grew up with a consistent father figure in your household? Okay, same 2 people. So, for you who grew up in a 2-parent household, a consistent father figure in the household, how did that shape you, right, to the man that you are today? Let's start with Bolu.
I would say I grew up in a Christian home. My dad is saved, thank God. And just growing up, I learned pretty quickly how, what it means actually to be a man, right? My dad was very much in the picture. I saw how he took care of my mom. I also saw, how he took care of the kids, all of us, my siblings. So growing up, it was a good experience to see that, that my father was a great example. And I would say that has really shaped my life today, because now I see my life and I'm like, okay, there's so many characteristics characteristics that I have that are very similar to my father.
Right.
Yeah.
Nice. How about you, Ellis?
Well, I would say for me is, like, me personally, I'm gonna keep it real. Like, I don't really have a strong relationship with my father. You know what I mean? Like, he's been there, he's been present, but I haven't really had a strong relationship with my father. But what I do say, what has helped me is knowing and seeing that he's always been present. You know what I mean? And I think seeing my dad and seeing that he's been present in my life, it helped me to see that, like, when I have a family, I want to make sure that I'm providing. I want to make sure that I'm putting in the work, not just being present, but, how could I be a better man? You know what I mean? How could I provide? How could I, be involved in my children's life? You know what I mean? So for me, it kind of ignited a fire in me to, be a better man. You know what I mean? When I reach that stage in my life. So
Right. Nice. So for the rest of us here, we've been, raised in a single family or a single parent household, right? So there wasn't a father in the picture. So where did you guys learn to become a man from? Like, who taught you guys to be a man? I guess we'll start with Jordan.
So where I learned to be, I think I probably should have raised my hand for the first part of the question. Whether or not my dad was there. I didn't necessarily, they divorced when I was 10 years old.
Okay.
10, 11 years old, something like that. And my dad prior to was in and out the house. I barely ever seen him. I have very few memories of him while I was younger. So I pretty much say he wasn't there to help me grow up when I was younger. But to answer the question of how did I learn to be a man? One, I think I really did pull a lot of my understanding of what a man is from the Bible. It comes from my relationship with God. It comes from scripture. Me seeing how Jesus condoned himself in this life, being a leader, opposing unrighteousness, providing for the people who were around him.
Right.
He gave me, like Jesus really did make clear to me how a man should condone himself. And on a more practical level, just church in general, being around other men who are fathers, who are caring for their families, seeing them and all that they do to ensure that their households are in order, and their futures are set. Like I seen the examples set before me from other men, and I followed that. Apart from that, in the hood, yes, you do have an example of what a man should be like, but thank God it never stuck with me. When I got saved, the other examples kind of took precedence over those examples from the neighborhood. Yeah.
Nice. What would you add to that, Emmanuel?
My story is slightly different. I mean, how did I learn to be a man? From the streets. And it's funny he mentioned the hood, but for me, it was more like sports was that man for me. And through sports, I learned what not to do from what I seen in the streets. So there was a huge lack of men for me to look up to, let alone black men. Because I feel like part of being a man today is being able to identify. So whenever I would see an example of what I would validate as a man, it never really hit home. It wasn't significant enough. Though I grew up in a Christian household, I can't say we were actively practicing like that. So I couldn't pull my examples from the Bible, like him, for example. So sports, it's really what taught me, okay, this guy is 16, 17, however old he is, he's my coach, or he's a father. How does he manage to go through all these different things that come to you in life and still sits here beside me and share his story and still make it worth a while to guide me to a better future.
Right.
And as I got older, I just basically, it stuck with me and just try to do different from what you saw if you want a different result, right?
Nice. How about you, Mello?
For me, it was kind of different. It was in my life, I always knew what a man was supposed to be. I knew my dad, but I never had like a relationship with him. I had father figures growing up, uncles, cousins, but I really took on how to be a man from the streets because I'm coming from a Jamaican household where you grew up before your time. They say you're way too big for your boots. Like that's a concept that's like engraved in us as a young boy because from young you're taught how to provide for yourself. My mom taught me how to cook before I even came to this country. Like how to cook for myself, how to clean for myself, and I was doing that before I was 10. So even when I came here, I always knew what a man was supposed to be and what a man's responsibility was. But I really grew up by the streets and father figures in my life, by uncles, cousins, like I said. Yeah, so it's just basic growing up in the hood.
Nice. Every boy, every young man needs a father figure in their life, right? If it's not their father, it's gonna be something else. Like you guys, you guys stated well. Like if it's not your dad, it's gonna be the streets. It's gonna be that that hood man that you used to look up to, or it's gonna be that basketball coach, right? Or it's gonna be a pastor, or it's gonna be a brother in church, right? But you need a figure, right? You need someone that you can look to and you can draw from, right? And that can teach you something. For me, I grew up in a single family household, but it's a bit different for me, right? I grew up with my dad, right? So my mom wasn't in the picture at the moment, right? So it was just me and my pops. And my dad, he instilled fear in me. You know what I mean? Like at a young age, like I was scared to do anything. I remember one time after high school, after school, right? I was still in high school. After school, I was at No Frills. And I'm with my friends, and usually, we would go to No Frills and steal. You know what I mean? So I'm at No Frills, and I wasn't feeling right that day, right? So I'm in No Frills, and I'm just looking around. I'm like, yo, something doesn't feel right. My friends are thinking about stealing, and I'm just like, something does not feel right. I turn around, and I see someone like kind of hiding in the corner. I'm like, who is that? So I look closely, and that's my dad, right? He's spying on me. He wants to see what I'm doing. I'm like, dang, you know what I mean? Like, I could have got killed today, right? So, that's the type of stuff, like, because I don't know how my life would have been if if it was vice versa, if I grew up with my mom. Like, I don't want to say, like, yo, I'll be in jail and stuff like that. Like, you always hear that stereotype, right? But I don't know, right? But I do know that having my dad in the picture really molded me, right? And it shaped me to the man that I am today, right? But yeah, that was good, guys. Let's talk about when you guys actually realized you became a man, right? Because it's one thing to say, yo, I'm a man, and it's one thing to actually realize that, yo, I'm a man. So when did you guys actually realize you were a man, right? Rather than thinking you were a man. When did that take place? Let's start with Bolu.
Always
Still
me,
doesn't
eh?
think he's a man.
Guinea pig. Okay. When did I start to realize I was a man? That's a really tough question to
I know,
answer, to
it's
be
a loaded
honest.
one. It's a loaded
Because,
one.
I don't think there was one point in my life, but I would say, like actually giving my life to Christ, actually, surrendering my life to Christ I would say, was the biggest transformation in my life. Because, prior to that, I wasn't someone to really take, responsibility for my actions, right? I wouldn't say I was someone that really, considered, what the purpose of my life was. So having a relationship with Jesus Christ, like coming into, Christendom, was actually what, helped me when I realized that, oh, there's so much I can do with my life. I can be in a much better place, as a man. I can actually, I can tell other people about Jesus. I can, bring other people, to him, and just grow spiritually, be a
Right,
leader.
right, yep.
And and it wasn't until I came into church that I was put in leadership positions. Prior to that, like I just lived my own life like the way I wanted to live it. But actually coming in, like, put me in positions where I was like, okay, you gotta actually, you gotta stand up, you gotta be a man, you gotta be responsible, you got to lead. And I think that's what really, opened my eyes to what manhood really,
Right,
really
right,
meant.
right. Nice. How about you, Ellis?
Man, I would say for me is when I start making excuses for my mistakes. You know what I mean? Like for me, like I realized, like when I realized, like, yo, like I gotta stop making excuses, for my mistakes. I gotta stop making excuses for when I mess up. You know what I mean? And just taking that responsibility of when I do mess up, like, yo, how can I grow from this? How can I become better? You know what I mean? And learning to take criticism, and taking criticism as a sense of becoming stronger. I realized, like, in that point in my life, when I was able to take criticism and take it as, yo, it's not someone trying to get at me. It's actually someone trying to help me and help me to become stronger. Right. I realized at that point okay, this is the turning point of me becoming a man. So I'll say that for me personally.
Nice, nice, nice.
For me, I don't think there was a realization because it's a hard question to answer. But when I started to take on the responsibilities of a man is probably when I got married, or I say when I got married, because then you realize that you're a provider. You have someone looking towards you. You have to be responsible for a household and somebody else. It's just like you're not taking care of yourself no more. So that's when I realized that I became a man, I would say, and taking on the responsibilities more.
Right. Emmanuel?
Yeah, they Mela kind of hit it on the head. It's not one particular moment. I think it's a build up to, and for me, it was when I became a father, because in that moment I had just finished college. Growing up, I don't know my father, so growing up, I was forced to be the man of the house. So thought I was a man, but when I realized, okay, like, this is my household I'm about to create. This is my responsibilities. It really hit different. So you now start taking things at face value. you start taking accountability and just being more in tune with my emotions. So, that allowed me to understand that, even though my ideology of what a man was came from the street, the emotional aspect of it was real. The journey is real, and it's not something to be ashamed or proud of. It's just take on and just make a difference if that's what you want to see.
Right.
For myself, yeah, I completely agree with a lot of what was said. There is not one instance that I can say, okay, yeah, I'm a man now, but rather steps of progression into manlyhood.
Yes.
And I can say, like, if I could change the question a bit, it would be, what has been my biggest step into manlyhood, and I would say that it is actually the season that I'm in right now, where it's, marriage was a step, or choosing somebody to marry was a step. Actually following through on that decision to get married was another step. Making certain financial decisions, purchasing a home, that's another step. And then now being at the position where Emmanuel, like what Emmanuel said of now I'm going to be a father, I feel like this is the biggest step I've ever taken.
Right.
And especially because it's a boy that I know is coming. Like I'm thinking, man, I need to be a manly example for my son. So I want to make more deliberate decisions that would say, okay, this is what a man is. This is how a man condones himself. And I've never been that deliberate in being a man. I never consciously said to myself, I want to be this type of man. So for those reasons, I think like right now is the biggest step. I'm not a dad yet, but right now it is the biggest step that I've taken into manlyhood.
Right. That's nice. That's nice. I like everything you guys said, man. If I would add, for myself, growing up with my dad, when I thought I was a man, we would clash like crazy, butt heads. You know what I mean? And my dad would say all the time, two male lions can't live in the same house, right? We just butt heads. Until one time, like my dad just got fed up and he said something. Until this day, I remember it was so funny, right? Oh, forgive me if this is not okay, but my dad said, yo, you pull down your pants, I pull down my pants. We'll see who the bigger man is, right?
I'm finished, bro.
But
Who won?
I ain't gonna say that. I ain't gonna say that. That's shut down. That's shut down. But when I moved out of the house and I got married,
Who won?
That's
we
what-
know.
that's when I really realized, what being a man is. Just taking our responsibility and being responsible, right? Having to pay bills, having to care for somebody else, right? It really showed me that no, you know what? Now you're a man, right? Right? And obviously there's more journeys to go through in life as you continue to grow into manhood, right? So let's talk about this, right? Biblical manhood and worldly manhood, right? So how does biblical manhood differ from worldly manhood? Let's start with Mello.
There's limitations. There's definitely limitations on biblical manhood compared to worldly manhood. Because in the world as a man, I never wanted to get married. I never wanted to get married at all. I just wanted to live that bachelor lifestyle, get money, have different girls, do whatever I want, go wherever I want, get up when I want, go to work when I want. But when you get married, in a Christian context, it's different. You have to be faithful to your wife. You have to stay committed. That commitment that you have to keep in Christianity is totally different from the world because there's a standard now you have to uphold. And that standard is not only with you and your wife, it's with standards between you, God, and your wife. In the world, people get married for tax benefits or whatever.
Business transaction.
Papers.
Yeah, papers or some emotional combustion inside of them saying, oh, I'm in love. you know, without no sacrifice. But in Christianity, it's different because commitment to God, that loyalty that you have with God, is different from having it with outside of God's relationship. That's what I would say. There's limitations to it.
Nice, nice. How about you, Ellis?
Yeah, just pretty much back from the question, I would say it's more of meekness. And I'm elaborate on that. Like when you look at the world and you look at an example of man and all that stuff, it's just like men in the world is just like, you always have to try to prove something, you know what I mean? Like you look at the hood videotapes and money and all that stuff and girls, and it's like trying to have that push to try to prove something, you know what I mean? But like when you look at the character of Jesus and like the biblical aspect, it's like meekness, like power under control. You don't have to try to prove yourself to anyone, you know what I mean? So like, based on a biblical standpoint as a man, it's like, because you know your place, you know who you are, you don't have to try to, prove your power to anyone. You're meek, you have that power under control. So I would say that's the both difference between a worldly man and, the biblical point of view. So.
All right, nice. Bolu?
For me, I would say being, in tune with your emotions. Yeah, I'm gonna put it that way because a lot of times, as men, or the way you see men in the world, it's almost like you put on this facade, right, and it's almost like you're a tough guy, right, and on the inside, you have so many emotions that you're dealing with, and you're not, letting out for God to actually deal with. It's almost like I'm tough, I'm a strong guy. You can't tell me nothing, you can't speak to me, right? I don't want to listen. This is the way I want to be, right? That's the way sometimes, the world portrays a man as. But in Christendom, like, manhood is different. It's, being changeable, being adaptable, being, listening to what the word of God has to say, what God has to say, or even other Christian brothers, like I think Ellis mentioned, being able to take criticism, right? Being able to, to be spoken to, and also, showing love towards other people, however, you want to show that love, right? Especially as me being married to my wife, the Bible talks about loving your wife, the way Christ loved the church.
Yes, yes.
Right? In the world, like, there's nothing like that, right? God is love. You can't love your wife like the way Christ loved the church. But coming to Christendom, it's a whole different ball game. That's what the standard is. That's what Christ expects from us as men, to really love, to really lay down our life as a sacrifice. So I think it's very different, in Christendom, like being a Christian.
Nice, nice. Jordan?
That's a hard act to follow. I don't think like I disagree with anything, neither can I add on. I definitely say that the major difference between a man in Christianity versus a man in the world is humility. It is that compassion, that love. I think there's overlapping characteristics of a man in the world and in Christianity when it comes to that boldness, the strength, the leadership. Those are attributes of the man that a lot of times the world, at least before modern day liberalism and their the way that they're trying to twist manlyhood now, up until today, up until then, it's been pretty much standard across the board where men are strong, Christian or not. Men are bold, Christian or not. Men are leaders, Christian or not. But the outstanding difference between the two has to be the loving components, the care, the gentleness, the Jesus attributes, the characteristics of Christ, the fruits of the Holy Spirit. I think those are things that the world can't really imitate. They can't imitate that because it does come from God. And
Nice. When I think about biblical manhood, I really think our best, not that I think, our best example of a biblical manhood is from Jesus, right? Like you guys touched upon, right? He always had this pattern. It was always serve and lead. Serve people and lead people. Serve people and lead people. And right? That's that's their that's their standard that I've noticed with Jesus. It's always been about serving people, right? Healing them, right? Meeting them at their need, right? And leading them, right, to greater and bringing them to greater things. And in the world, you don't really see much of that. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, there's men that will help out, and they'll try to be leaders. Most of the times you see that from coaches, right, and stuff like that. But really, really and truly, you don't see that a lot, right? So if I could say where it differs, I would say there. Okay, so what is the significance of men in the church? Let's start with Jordan.
I wish you didn't, to be honest.
Sorry, bro.
What is the significance of men in the church? The significance of men in the church. I think for all the attributes that we were talking about before, it's important that that is evident in your church. It's important that it's evident in your congregation. They should be able to lead people, not just demanding, like lording themselves over someone else, but rather leading people to Christ. Being able to win souls, being able to take care of somebody spiritually, like disciple them, teach them lessons, especially with other men. It's very hard for a man to put himself under a woman, to be taught, to be led, to be directed. That's almost unheard of. It's apart from a mother-son relationship, and we all know how that usually ends out. So I think that it's important for men to be in the church, to be those leaders, to be those examples, to be that figure in the church, kind of like, I don't know, a leader in some capacity. I don't know.
No, that's good. That's good. What you think, E-Man?
I think the importance or the significance of a man in the church would be transparency. A man on the outside world, so men that aren't in church or planted inside the church, and even men in church, I find we tend to have ego. So the only way to truly break through that ego is by me telling you, son, brother, I've been where you've been through, and sharing my experiences through and through. Because it's one thing to preach the word and speak. I'm not really as good as some of the men here as far as the Bible, but I was still installed the right from wrong. I still understand that concept.
Right.
So if I'm gonna, as he said, save souls, I can't be saving souls by just throwing the scripture at them. It may go over their head. It may frustrate me. It may not be authentic. So my view on it would be, it's not one or the other, but regardless of which route you take, be transparent about it. Be real with it. So that way, whichever soul that you are captivating can truly connect to you.
Mello?
I'll say to serve, a servant and availability, because that verse where it talks about where the widows were neglected and serving, right? Being served, and they called those 7, those guys were pivotal in the Christian movements because they were available and they were filled with the Holy Spirit and willing to serve. So that's one attribute that man must have in the church, willing to serve and be available to establish a church. Yeah.
I would say the importance of men in the church is they provide structure. They help to hold things in place. You know what I mean? You see the different ministries like song service and all the ministries like that. These men, they provide structure and how things should be organized, how things should be orchestrated. So I really believe that, men in the church, they do provide the most important thing, and that is structure and having things in place. So.
They said it all. The only thing I'll add is men in the church should be able to take initiative when they see things out of place. Not, to wait for someone to chase them. Oh, you do this, you have to do this. But to actually, rise up above it and just, do what they're meant to do as men, as Christian men, lead by example, make sure that, they're obedient to God, to the Holy Spirit, in case, they have to talk to somebody or to teach a class or, lead song service. Just, taking initiative, I would say.
Right, nice. So you guys heard the saying toxic masculinity, right? You guys hear that saying. It's all over, media, whatever, right? So when you guys hear that, what does that mean to you? How would you define toxic masculinity? let's, let's start with Mello.
Man is supposed to be masculine. It's not toxic. The simple. Masculinity can't be toxic because a man is supposed to be masculine. The world is just trying to feminize man and demasculate us, basically. Castrate us. Exactly what it is. But we can't. Simple.
Right. Yeah.
I think that toxic masculinity, when I think of toxic masculinity, I think that, I believe that it is true that there are times when men can be toxic, right? Where the power gets to their head, the leadership gets to their head, and they think that they could dominate, rule, abuse the people that he's supposed to care for.
Right.
Right. So I do think that there is a valid point when people claim that there is toxic masculinity. Now, I think the problem with the world is that they're trying to say all masculinity is toxic,
Exactly. Yeah.
whereas that is definitely not the case. The reason why battles are fought for our freedom in war is because there are masculine men. The reason why we have good, strong political leadership is because there are good, strong men. The reason why there are good church leaders and pastors is because there are good, strong, masculine men. Now, if you try to say that all those attributes are toxic, what you're going to get is a ton of agreeable men that are unwilling to fight when fighting is necessary. And I think that can destroy a society from the ground up. We know what happens when men are missing from the home, missing from the church, missing from battle and war and political realm. Like when men are missing, bad things happen. And the same can be said about women, but we can't make all people the same in terms of their attributes. No, there needs to be the differences and they need to be distinguished so that society can function the way that God intended it to.
Yes, yes.
I definitely agree with you there because there is a difference between a man and a woman. And it's not to say we can't be respected and treated equally, but when I think of toxic masculinity, I think of insecurity. I think if a man is insecure in himself, regardless of my flaws, that ain't gonna bother me. You know what I mean? Because I know who I am. I know where I stand. I know what I value. And no matter what the outside world may say about me, that's not me. Now, as far as being this bold man as well, I also understand that I have to be accountable to be mindful of my brothers beside me because they may not be as bold as me, but doesn't mean their voice don't resonate. So, like I said earlier, a lot of these lessons were taught through sports. In a locker room, you find all type of different type of men, but it's clear as day. Like you're not gonna come here on some less than because your problem's outside. So when we come together as men, it's not so much about toxic or ego or anything. It's just about being accountable. So if we start taking on labels that starts promoting the gray area, we also now losing ourselves. So if we go back to that accountability and just being honest with ourselves, titles like that would never really have track. It would not really move forward.
Right. I think also too, I think one of the many reasons why, toxic masculinity, right, came about is because of, guys like Bill Cosby and guys like, R. Kelly, right, who abused their power, or what's his name, Harvey Weinstein. Weinstein, like these guys abused their power, right, and did things they shouldn't have done, right, and these people are like, oh, that's what happens when you put men in power. They do that, they belittle, and all of these things, and right, they use 1, 2, 3 people, right. And they try to pin it, on the whole, male race, right?
Facts.
But that's not a masculine issue. That's a sin issue.
Right. Come on.
And they won't call it out for what it is, right? They'll say, oh, it's men. We have to turn men into, right? What Mello was saying, feminine men, right? What does that even mean?
Femin.
Feminine, right? But yeah, when I think about toxic masculinity, like it just doesn't make sense to me, right? Because like when I think toxic, I think of something that you don't want to be a part of. Like you don't want, like, oh, that's toxic. I don't want to be a part of that. Like, how could being a man be toxic? You know what I mean? It just doesn't click to me.
I mean, if there's toxic masculinity, there's definitely toxic femininity.
Oh yeah.
Hundo
Okay. Let's move on. What do you guys think men today, right, are lacking in this current day? Who wants to start?
Y'all want to take it back there? Alley-oop?
Ellis, you wanna head it?
I would say a lot of men nowadays, they don't have vision, man. They don't have vision.
Loud.
You know, and vision is what drives everything. You know what I mean? It's like if you don't have vision, you're not gonna be driven to drive the car to get to where you want to be. You know what I mean? So I find that a lot of men nowadays, they just don't have vision. They just go with, oh, whatever life gives me, I'm just gonna, ride with the waves. Like that doesn't fly. You know what I mean? It's like you have to have vision for your life, because you don't have vision, you're not gonna get anywhere. You know what I mean? So I see that's the biggest thing that men are lacking nowadays. So
I think one thing about men is that, men are running away from responsibility, man. Like, men don't want to actually take responsibility for their actions, right? For example, you see some men, not wanting to get married for the mere fact, they just want to keep running around with all the ladies, all the girls, they don't want to, settle down, start a family, build a family. And another thing is that men run away from actually being able to help, help around, in your church, in an organization.
Yeah.
Men just want to slouch, just want to do whatever they want to do, right? And that's not the best thing. Like, men are supposed to take responsibility. Men are supposed to, rise up, to the occasion and not run away, right?
Yes.
Face their fears and take it from there.
Exactly. Absolutely. Jordan, you wanna share your
yeah. If I were to answer the question, I think that the number one thing men are missing, and I know this can go for both men and women, but I think the number one thing that men are missing is God.
Oh, talk to them, bro.
I just think it's God. I think that even if they were to have a healthy, like all the attributes, of a good, if without God, there's no direction, like Ella said, there's no vision. There's not even a clear understanding of whether, like, what responsibilities they should take on or how they should act within those responsibilities. There's little to no guidance on how to be a man in life, period, right? So I think that you need to have God above all else. And men are running away from God.
Right.
Men are running away. Look at the churches nowadays. The churches are 80% women, 60 to 80% women. I just pulled that number from the top of my head.
You're probably right.
But yeah, when you look at it, it's a lot of women. The women to male ratio is ridiculous, and men are running away from God. And then if I go back to what I said earlier, you wonder why society is the way that it is. It's because men are running from God, which means they're running away from the attributes associated to him, like responsibility, like leadership, like love, like gentleness, like kindness, like patience. All of those attributes are necessary for a man to be a man. And God is at the center of it all. Give man God, man will change. Without God, man will remain the same. And I think that's what we need.
Hold on, did this man just drop the fruits
Yeah,
of
he's
the
dropping
spirit on us?
some gems out here, bro.
The man just dropped Galatians 5:22 on us. Yo, mic drop.
That's crazy. But it's actually funny that he says that, though. He's absolutely right. It's not so much, there's people out there who's not comfortable or have the same religion as us, but they do need that higher spirit, because I think what men are running from is guidance. As a kid in the playground, we used to play around. Your friend does something stupid, you smack him across the head, guidance. And it just fast forward to being a man. Like, when you grew up in the streets and you almost self-made, you're a bad man. You're the top of the top. Can't nobody tell you nothing, and that's where it becomes a problem. It becomes a detriment. As a man, to be a good leader, you got to know how to follow as well. Understanding that principle is what makes you the man. You know what I mean? So if we can't get to that place where I can humble myself and come to you and ask you for that real guidance,
Yeah.
then the truth is we're not really progressing and we're not talking about the bigger issues here. So yeah, we're running away from our own destiny by being afraid of what we could become through God.
Nice. Melo?
What I could say is task. Man don't have no task. I was speaking to my wife about this week. I'm like, how is it possible that like some guys could just get up,
Have nothing to do.
no nothing to do, like
Monday,
you don't go to
you
work.
have nothing to do.
There's
Tuesday,
no vision.
you have nothing to do. Wednesday, you have nothing to do. Thursday, straight 2K all day, COD all day.
All day.
Yeah. Yeah, I was like, how is that even possible? Like nothing to do. Is it even fair for us, some guys, to just get up, go to work, have different tasks, have a vision for their money, have a vision for their family? Is it even fair for us to get up and have a vision and have tasks? And she's like, oh, don't think like that. Don't think like that. Some people have to just take on responsibilities. Don't think that like, saying that, is it fair for you? Don't fall into that trap of like, oh, complacency. Because some people are just complacent. But we are the ones that have to take on the tasks and the responsibilities of life.
And that's
some
why you're a
people
man.
just don't. Some people are just gonna fall into that trap. It's not fair, but don't fall into the trap and that mindset of thinking it's not fair. Just get up and task yourself, do what you have to do, and go get it.
Right.
You know? Yeah.
like
Have a
there's-
vision and a task, man.
Andre, there's that saying it's not in the Bible, but it says idleness is the devil's playground.
Yeah.
And a lot of men are dwelling in idleness right now.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah,
devil's just
yeah.
manipulating them,
Yeah.
playing with them. I always had
true.
this mindset, especially when it comes to video games, because I think that's what occupies a lot of man's time
Right.
Yeah.
when they're taskless.
Yeah.
And it's like it gives them a false sense of success.
Yeah, yeah.
You
yeah.
just leveled up in 2K. Now all of a sudden you're something.
Right.
Yeah.
You got to 155 at COD. Now all of a sudden, yeah, I'm that guy now.
Right,
20
right.
kills. You've accomplished. What
Yeah,
is
it's like
this?
yeah.
It's a video game. It's a simulation. You're not successful because you're good at a game.
Yeah.
And men have just completely lost sight of what matters in life. And
It's like the digital universe, and this is where we place our values, on social media. Man are falling into the trap of likes. Me and Emmanuel were talking about that earlier. And now Jordan brought up the fact of video games, which is actually a fact. Man is like dedicated to these video games. And if you see video games from when we were young to now, it's just like, it's totally different.
They made it
That's
real.
what-
They
made it real. That's what's
EA
capturing
Sports,
your
you're in
mind.
the game.
Whoa! I never took that in.
What did he say?
Me either. Me
EA
either.
Sports in the game. You're
Oh,
in
wow.
the game.
Wow.
Come on, stay woke, man.
And we also have virtual reality too, right?
Right.
And if
Yeah,
people wear
VR.
they actually, they're immersed in the environment.
Bro, did
So-
you know esports is a thing now? You can get a scholarship to go to school to play video games.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Fam.
That's the
E-gaming.
devil for you, bro.
Oh, these guys are making money still.
Crazy.
I ain't mad at
On
the money
YouTube?
aspect of it, but do you see the target? The people,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
our young men that they're taking off and changing their values.
Absolutely.
So this is like for you guys personally in your own lives. What are some areas where are some areas personally you feel like you fall short in when it comes to being a man? Let's see. Who wants to start this one off?
I could start it. In my spiritual life, definitely I could be reading more, being in relationship with God more, Definitely building my finances more, placing my values, less in the material things and thinking about the eternal. And just relationship with God, building my relationship with God more, and finance. Yeah.
Shoot, that's a tough one. That's a really tough one. Oh
You
man.
gotta think.
I think for me, as I'm growing and as I'm learning, I'm realizing how important the value of time is. You know what I mean? So like for instance, like for I'm just gonna give an example, like on YouTube, right? Let's say there's like a 15-minute video. Like nowadays, this is like I'm constantly thinking about, okay, my time, my time, my time. Like, yo, how can I improve my time? Because sometimes this is like I could spend like an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours on YouTube, like and you're just watching regular stuff, NBA stuff, nothing bad, like just regular stuff, right? But for me, I like the older I'm getting, I'm realizing, yo, like I need to stop wasting my time. And it's not things that are sinful, but it's just like, yo, I could put more time in, like, spending more time with God, like Mendel said. How could I be more in tune with God's voice? How could I be more in tune with, or studying about like finances and, investments, you know what I mean? Like things that are educating me, things that will benefit me, you know what I mean? So I find that for me, I can improve on giving a lot more time to things that will benefit me, educate me, and help me to grow my mind, rather than things that were not really that will not really add to my life. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
For me, I would very similar to Ellis. Managing my time properly. I think it's something I can work on.
Right.
Just spending more time with God. Being intentional. Also being intentional about creating. Building relationships as well. Following up on people and being discipled in my own right, and as well as leadership. Being more active rather than passive. In my marriage especially, and just taking being more responsible in that sense.
Right.
Being an example, I would say I can improve in those areas for sure.
Nice.
For me, I would say it's taking my leadership seriously. Taking my leadership seriously. There's a scripture, I can't remember off the top of my head where it is. I believe it's in Titus, but it's saying for those who are given the gift of leadership, lead. And it just makes that clear statement. And it's basically saying to be deliberate about your leadership, be intentional about your leadership. And I think that's really something I have to work on, that I'm not just going to be passive in the things that God has put me over, that I'm going to take it seriously. In my home, I'm going to be that example of praying, reading my Bible. In my ministry, I'm going to be that example of sacrifice. I'm going to be that example of giving your whole heart, your mind, and strength. And I think for me, it's taking my leadership positions seriously in every area of life. So that's something that I personally really need to grow on.
Nice.
For me, it would be just being consistent, like being more disciplined with my consistency. I haven't found mine yet, but at times you do have to be consistent with that discipline, because when you are around people who aren't necessarily into the faith as strong or as burning as bright as you are, you tend to get frustrated. At least I do, right? So in those seasons, I found like, okay, so I'm doing this and I can't get no answers, and I would give up. So it's kind of similar to what he says as far as being more serious with it and taking accountability towards that. Right. So just being more consistent with that discipline, right? When the way I came to God, I found God. It wasn't your average or typical way, but I think everybody says that. But for me, it was just more like that whole street mindset, learning to let that go and trusting Him more. And even though I now know that He is in control, it's that consistency of making sure, like, even when as a man my flesh may have fallen short, I'll be all right. Especially in circles like this, and it's accountability. That's all it is.
I would say for me personally, I'll ride off of Ellis and Bolu. It's time for me. When COVID, like before COVID happened, I'd be like, God, I just don't have enough time, And then COVID happens, and I felt like God was looking down at me like, okay, there's your time. What are you gonna do with it? Right? And I realized it had nothing to do with time. It was my discipline, right? I just wasn't disciplined enough, right? And I had to realize, I have to discipline, my time. I have to be more intentional with my time and what I give myself to, right? Not to waste my time, right? Because once it's gone, you're not getting it back. You know what I mean? So, that's something for me personally. that I feel like, I fall short in, and I, have to continue to make strides to improve on. All right, all right. Well, thank you guys, man. Thank you guys so much for coming out to Secured. This has been, a great episode, Manhood. I believe your words, all of your words, will, touch people and leave them with something to really think about, and maybe even, hopefully, changes some things in their lives, right? But again, thank you guys, Jordan, Bolu, Eman, Ellis, and Mello. We're signing out.